Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's another Xibalba dev stream, specifically targeting the Ansifii tech map as we have been. I got a good feeling about today. I think we're going to get a lot of progress made, and then, with any luck, we'll be able to start doing some more other Regency planning. Probably, well, I guess I'll probably do some tomorrow or something, just because we're getting to that point where we don't have to worry about little old Ansifii for much longer. They grow up so fast. What's up, Beaver? How you doing? Just gonna quickly get my music going. Okay, so let's talk about Cosmonarchy's immersive stuff. So that as part of the intro today, we're gonna be I'm gonna be presenting to you guys a bit of stuff about the immersive planning. I haven't done a massive amount. Like we have names for all of the campaigns and stuff. I think that was something that I did 2 days ago though on the previous stream. However, since the previous stream, yesterday I was doing a recorded session, and I was just working on the description for stuff like the tutorials and for immersive content in general. So in this little block of text, which you can access using the URL above or just going to the Cosmonarchy page and clicking on the immersive link, there is a description for my design philosophy for immersive content, for single player content. Obviously, immersive content is just my fancy way of saying single player content, if you weren't aware. So yeah, I just go through it all. I explain everything here. There's probably some more stuff that I should throw in there here and there. There's some things I'm sure I haven't considered, but these are the main sort of design tenets. I go into all of them. And I talk about the shortcomings of other campaigns in general when it comes to an RTS and the main goal. I think one thing that I definitely missed that I'll end up adding in probably tomorrow or maybe after the stream was talking specifically about how the like players tend to either opt into RTS campaign content knowing that it's not going to be a competitive experience, or they ignore it because they feel like it's just a waste of time because it's not going to be a competitive experience. So I hint at that, and I do say stuff like we're going to compete for the player's time in this text, but I think coming out right and saying, yeah, by the way, like one of the main goals here is to be competitive and to make it so that there's a challenge at play. I think that will help sell the main message a bit better. It's like a nice way to summarize it, right? So anyway, if you want to read this in depth without me scrolling around like a lunatic, then I would suggest you check out the link. And then aside from that, yeah, we'll be chilling. We'll be you can also look through some of the updated tutorial text and whatnot. Not really a huge amount of changes, but stuff that was just made a bit more accurate. So I will be making some changes to the folder structure where inside this URL, you'll be able to go to like, a section that's like set one Psychora or something, whatever the case may be, where you'll actually be able to go to a dedicated page for each one of these campaigns. And there will be links here, but it'll be like a primer that's basically just like a quick description of what the campaign is and what's going to happen in it. Like I guess you could say it's like the blurb on the back of a book when you're shopping for a book in a bookstore. You turn around the book and you see, oh, there's like a little, I don't know, like a couple like 2 paragraphs or something, or a paragraph that basically is like a pitch for like what you might see in the book. It'll be something like that, where it's just describing you the premise, describing to you the whole thing, the whole thrust of the campaign, what you might expect, and then you get to click the link for more info on a dedicated page where you'll have stuff that's a bit more like the campaign planning for the Cosmonarchy stuff way back when, where I actually do go through like premise, chronology, notes, specs, location, that sort of stuff. So you'll be able to come to a page that is more like this, but instead of putting that in every single one on the same page, I think it makes more sense to separate it out. It'll give me more room to plan and talk and type a bunch of stuff without worrying that I'm bloating a specific page. And in the same vein, I might actually decide that it will make sense to move the Regencies to a separate page from Xibalba as well, but not 100% sure about that. I think what we just need is some way to collapse the various subfields. So like by default, none of this mechanic stuff shows and none of the Regencies show. It just says like Regencies and then an arrow, and then you can click the arrow to expand it and then go to whatever you want. I think that'll just make more efficient use of this, because particularly with mechanics, a lot of these are like, 1 paragraph or something, right? Because you don't need to go into a massive amount of detail. It's not super complicated. So it doesn't really make sense to have them. I like that you can just go navigate to something if you want to know about like some specific thing, but I don't like that like you have to look at that every single time. If you're just here to get regencies, you should be able to access them without scrolling. IMO. So anyway, yeah, some more stuff, some more updates. Speaking of updates, we do have some icon passes. I've actually processed a few icons. The same day that I did my last stream, I processed the very first icon, which was for the Architect. This graphic was originally going to be used for the Talos. And since then, I've just been processing icons here and there, so you'll see a bunch of new ones. This is not indicative of the placeholder assets necessarily that I will be presumably using while we're getting the Ansifii up and running, but I think it'll be important for general discussions anyway, just so that when you're looking at this, it's not like a bunch of the same unit. You can kind of reflexively understand that like something is different than another thing, hopefully. So that's the plan. We'll see how successful that truly is. But I do like the fact that we've got some new stuff here. I was able to process these icons with DF's tool set, his Photoshop action set, and I don't do them as well as he does because I'm still learning how to use the tool set, obviously, but they should be serviceable enough. There's some that are just a little bit abstract in terms of the actual units that they represent that you can't really represent it in just an icon. It only really makes sense when you see the unit, but that's like stuff like the path sign or maybe to a lesser extent the climatarium or whatever. That's not most of them, so. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we'll be doing today. I do kind of want to go super deep into the Ansifii tech tree and start planning out like the warships and the really big stuff, but I'm going to contain myself here. I'm going to work a bit more on that, sweet spot of tiers 2 through 5, because 1 is seemingly pretty good. Maybe we'll get another armor unit at some point, maybe another orbital unit, I don't know, but 2 is even seemingly pretty good as well. They actually have the same exact set of units, which is kind of funny. So, bearing that in mind, when you see that you have 8 units in each tier, and wow, we actually have 8 units in tier 3 as well. Yeah, so maybe there's not really much of a reason necessarily to branch out. Maybe that's fine, at least for now. We can start to consider that stuff. I don't know that there will be an infrastructure unit every single tier. I don't actually see much of a reason to include one at tier 4, but that's maybe because I'm not 100% sure what the composition would be. If I'm ignoring tier 1, so if I ignore everything above the odd tiers when we get there, so at tier 3, I only consider what you have access to at tier 3, sort of like how obviously you have to do that for tier 1 because there's nothing that comes before tier 1. I was kind of thinking about that, like what would a composition look like if I just considered tier 3? And does that lead to something positive? You know what I mean? Like, is it actually good to operate on that? I'm not 100% sure. I guess we'll have to think about that, right? Because we got the Maverick, heavy infantry, very solid, very very simple concept in that respect. So we don't have to worry too much about that. That's gonna do a lot of your stuff for like your general purpose, like the bread and butter of your army, even at tier 3, right? The standard trooper type archetype. What's up, Shamble Man? Welcome. So we had that. The Herald is the sort of like sequel to the Waylay in the sense that it will be able to jump around, but it's actually more of a combatant. It's more combatant oriented, combat oriented, right? It's the same range as the Waylay, but even though it fires less frequently, it's a burst weapon with 3 armor pen, so pretty reasonable. And then they actually get the same sort of stat for the energy thing, but they have more base energy. They have 50 more base energy, so they can store 2 jumps instead of 1.5. And they can also leap to higher ranges. This might actually change. I might keep the range consistent, or make it even less because it's a heavier unit. Maybe, I'm not sure. But you get the idea that these guys are your mobile infantry, and they're still somewhat ranged, right? So the Maverick has 6 range instead of his predecessor, the Hotshot, only having 5 range. So based on that, like you can see where it makes a lot of sense to combine these, but like the Heralds are going to require a bit more micro. Okay, so we got that idea. Then we got the Gauntlet. He's obviously the one that you are going to be doing a bunch of work on to just in general, you want to be able to work on these guys on the front lines, but they're not the most mobile. And this is where the APCs come in, right? Because the Steel Wheel, which obviously is a sequel to the Road Trip in that sense, they move fast. Like, they move fairly fast. I think the Steel Wheel moves slower, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it does move noticeably slower, but it's more armored. It has more capacity, so you can stick, 6 Mavericks, oh no, only 3 Heralds, and wow, only 1 Gauntlet. I forgot the Gauntlet was so heavy. I might drop that to 3 for the weight. I think that would be a bit more sensible. Maybe I went a bit overboard. So if we open up the Gauntlet, this is where like I'm starting to really shadowbox the stats and the interactions therein. So yeah. The other thing is that the Proxima could technically be loaded in to the Steel Wheel, which doesn't make much sense, does it? So I think we'll have to drop the Proxima down to an 8. Where is it? I don't know how to count to P. So the other stuff here is, right, we have the Stormfront, we have the Cloudburst. Stormfront's basically just a basic fighter in that respect. It's like a heavier version of the Velocity. Now, the Velocity's sequel is the Aurora, and the idea is that these guys are faster than something like the Stormfront, which is a bit slower, right? These are much faster. But, yeah, I think when you're looking at something like this, you're probably expecting these to be, like, more fire support in general. Oh, and I never pushed the, or pulled the changes. Let's see. I never pulled the changes for the flags. So this flags section will stay the way that it is. But there will be another section to its, maybe to its right or something, or maybe just below it, called plane, that will tell you what plane it's actually in, right? So if we look at, not the Nebula, the Magnetar, you can see it's the Destroyer plane, which if you cross-reference with the collision section, you'll see that that's the third, 3 out of 4 of the distinct planes for air units. Well, that's the wrong one. So anyway, I did make that change before I went live earlier. So I think at this point, yeah, I'm trying to build my head around the idea of like what you're really going to be doing. Proxima are fairly pricey. I think they'll be even a bit more pricey than they currently are. But the idea is that you'll be able to deploy those when you specialize into the Iron Garden, which is pricey in and of itself. You'll be able to drop those out and... Okay. I'm trying to think about like how you would form a composition with these units. You also have all the options previously, like the Dispute obviously doesn't have a sequel anywhere yet, might not ever. It's a more of a niche unit. But you'll be able to produce that out of quarries, out of treasuries, out of whatever other town centers end up coming out as a sequel, a successor to the treasury. So I'm thinking, compositionally speaking, even the tier 1 infantry works pretty well with the tier 3 infantry in that you can put hotshots in front of Mavericks if you still have a bunch of galleries, and you only have like 1 or 2 captaincies. You can train a bunch of Mavericks and put them behind the hotshots, and as long as they can remain within, as long as there's some disparity there, like they can attack the same target as long as they're within 1 range of each other because of the 1 range increase for Mavericks. So you can use that to your advantage positionally. You can use, heralds and gauntlets the same way that you would use gauges. You can use gauntlets, and not really in the same way that you can use waylays because they're less effective, but they're more like a harassment unit. You could use heralds that way, but they can also be used on the front lines because of their increased stats. Yeah, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to try to isolate your shadow box compositions just at tier 3. But if I had to look at that, I would say you're definitely missing like multi-target stuff. You do have Proxima, but it doesn't have AoE. You don't actually have any AoE. You do have the Hail Ray, which is the Hail Ray weapon, rather, from the Cloudburst. So, okay, that's kind of interesting because this is basically a cannon, right? So you could tech into air, orbital, if you wanted crowd control, or you would just decide you have to go into a higher tier of your, tier 4 or whatever, and you would, excuse me, you would grab Thunderhead or maybe Anthem. So crowd control could be resolved with the options that we currently have. Anthem is probably the longest range. I think it's the longest range unit up until that point, although the Thunderhead also is sort of tied with it. I wonder if maybe the Thunderhead drops in range down to 6, just like the Strong Arm. And we'd go for... I also think maybe the Intendant should move a bit faster than the Constable, and that can be one of the ways that it's done, but it is heavier armor, so it's hard to know that for sure, if that makes any sense. I also noticed that my weight values for the air units are interesting. Can you imagine loading a bunch of fighters into your fucking APCs? Because there's not going to be any restrictions on that stuff, so you can. It's just really funny. Funny to think about. Okay, so all right, let's consider this, right? Options in tier 4. If we're gonna copy the same exact sort of formula that we had in the previous tiers, we would just add one more armor unit and one more orbital unit, and that would be how we call it a day, because we don't really need an infrastructure unit. I'm not sure if that's actually the play I want to make, but I think that the captaincy is already pretty satisfied with... I'm satisfied with the captaincy's loadout with tier 3 and 4 infantry. I don't know that we need any other infantry. The Mountaintop has multi-attack, which isn't really the same... It's not splash damage, but it can target up to 3 unique targets, which means it's possible for it to handle a decent amount of stuff. I don't know. And the Aurora is obviously just like a Harrier, like fighter, harassment fighter, if you will. Yeah, Shambler, you'll be able to do anything like that. The whole idea is that the systems don't... I'm trying to make systems that don't have arbitrary exceptions where possible. And there's not really any reason why... Like, I know I'm going to want air units to be able to be loaded into transports, but I don't see a reason to restrict that to only air transports. I could just say that the... I could say that the unit is... So... Yeah, so what I could do is I could say that the unit can only load into a transport of its same plane, which would be building off of a system instead of being arbitrary. But then you would have to have, like, it would overcomplicate things, because you would have to have, like, you'd have to have a bunch of different transports and stuff. So I think it's just fine to keep it that way. Your idea of a mobile maintenance platform does make a lot of sense, though. Obviously, you could have something where loaded units are repaired while they're docked. So that could be a fighter, that could be an infantry unit, that could be an armor unit, obviously. There's all sorts of things that could be. So I think it makes a lot of sense to try that out. And that would be an example of maybe another armor unit that we could throw in here. Because we don't have that many support units, right? We do have the soft spot still for healing, and you'll probably want at least one Omni Bay for that, even up until maybe tier 5. I'm not... Yeah, I think it will get a... what do you call it? The soft spot will get a sequel at some point, but it'll be a different kind of sequel. So I think it's fine to throw in another healer unit. We actually don't have that many healing units in the opening tiers. So maybe throwing in a tier 3 unit that comes out of the Iron Garden that is this sort of like maintenance platform or whatever could be pretty interesting. And then a sequel to it could be like something that is also a garrison, which means the units that are loaded into it that are being repaired can also fight while inside it, which could be really interesting as well. Um, and obviously the repair would be, although with the if you go the pavilion route, so there's a bunch of different passives that are related to transports where combatants loaded within this unit can fire at opponents. Okay. Cargo within this garrison can move inside the transport's interior, which that's floor plan. That allows you to literally be like, it's mobile terrain, basically. Another layer of terrain. And then cargo within this garrison can be targeted by weapons and abilities. Is open roof. And that allows you to actually, like, if you're an enemy and somebody's got a pavilion loaded with a bunch of men, you can target the men, or you can target the pavilion. But the pavilion has 20 fucking armor. It's very tanky. So the whole idea is that you probably just want to render it mostly useless. It does have the anvil cannon, which is quite powerful. And it can attack while moving. But it can only attack stuff that it's looking at. Like there is an arc. Oh, that's a weapon stat that we should add. Let me message Vika about that. All right. Yeah. Angle and turn radius, weapon angle and unit turn radius need to be added for sure. Most units will have fairly high turn radius, and I guess that will just be out of like 180, and that'll be like per second maybe. So if you can, like turn radius would be out of 180 because that would be. Well, I guess it could be out of 360. Yeah, I don't know. And then obviously some weapons you'll be able to fire without turning at all, although those will be fairly rare. I guess for now we could probably inherit Brood War stats and then look into that. Okay, so Veek's gonna add that at some point. It looks like we already have turn rate in or turning radius or turning rate or whatever in Antikythera, which makes sense because I recall him implementing that a while ago, like probably a month ago. So that's no problem, but we'll have to add that to the unit stats. All right, so I'm thinking we definitely want that support unit where you can load it in. That's fine. We also want the... Do we need any more crowd control or multi-target? Probably not. Do we need any other utility units? We could try to work in some sort of disruption, but we already do have that in the form of the cloudburst, which can isolate. You can block line of sight with that in a fairly wide radius, obviously. So that's pretty cool. All right, so yeah, I think we'll drop the support unit at tier 3, and then we'll go into tier 4 with the idea of adding in another armor unit, another orbital unit, and that'll be there will be 16 units between the two tiers, which is matching the previous setup. Although it doesn't have to, but I'm still wondering what the other units would actually look like. For my money, I'm thinking that like armor compositions, or obviously you're going to be infantry is your bread and butter as in Ansifii, but armor based, like armor infused compositions using Proxima and Steel Wheel for troop transport. That's one thing, but I don't really think you have any. You don't have any frontal sort of damage, right? The Cutlass doesn't get a successor until the... Oh, actually, the Cutlass doesn't have a successor. I was wondering what the fuck was going on there, but I remember I removed the successor from the Cutlass. If I go to you, Cutlass... Yeah, I don't think anything does... because the Beasthorn was originally going to be like that, but then I made it more frontal and less ranged. And, yeah, okay. Okay, so... They are characterized by their love of big guns, but a lot of it is their love of handheld guns, and less so about vehicles. That being said, like, so basically vehicles and aircraft always end up being, like, supplementary. Not necessarily supportive, obviously. We got some pretty heavy-duty ones. But the idea is that they allow for infantry to manifest themselves, right? They facilitate infantry dominance. They don't really... Like, it's possible to make compositions entirely out of armor and orbital if you wanted to, but I wouldn't advise it. I'll put it to you that way. So, would there be an artillery vehicle? I think it makes a lot of sense, actually, and it surely could be introduced at tier 4. We do have an artillery vehicle already with the Cutlass. The thing is that it's not crowd control, so... Yeah, we haven't gotten into the melee stuff. Any walker-type vehicles are going to be infantry in the infantry branch, even though they're not, like, a man in a suit. They're a man in power armor or whatever. That's what those will turn into, right? So, if you think about your fucking... what were those? The knights or whatever? For... Maybe they were even called Iron Knights? I don't actually remember. From Warhammer 40,000. There'll be something like that that's a little bit more... obviously stylized very differently, designed very differently. But there'll be something like that for the Ansifii infantry as their endgame stuff, where they'll be taking to the fields and stuff like that. Oh, they were just called knights. Okay. So yeah, they all have stuff like that. The other thing that they'll be able to do is so they have the walkers and like these like big war mechs and stuff. That'll be pretty solid infantry. But you'll notice that they already have 2 hovercrafts. And the big thing is that they have these platforms that literally just carry like bases and hordes of Ansifii around with them. So you'll be able to see that like in action eventually, where you'll have an enormous platform with ridiculous amounts of survivability and stuff, as their like some of their end game tech, and it will be carrying forth like an entire base's worth of production structures, like 10 production structures inside that thing, all just training infantry on the front lines. And so these giant platform tanks will be what they use in the end game. Along with, there will be some long ships as well that they'll use. I'm calling them long ships right now because I don't actually know what they'll be called. But these very large, like very long ships that are also able to deploy infantry. I'm thinking about making that part of their weapon, like the orbital drop pod stuff that's in so many sci-fi settings. I'm thinking about the Ansifii using that as artillery from these long ships, and then like in addition to the artillery blast, the infantry, pour out a couple of however many units were in the garrison or something, and maybe the pods have like a weight capacity of 10 or something like that. And so then it could theoretically also be throwing out small vehicles as well. But the idea is that you'd be able to sort of fire these off in the distance from some orbital ships, some heavy orbital ships. So that would also allow you to do that sort of thing. Maybe that would even be a building trait initially, and then some of the ships would take it precedence later. So, but their playstyle is the idea is that they're facilitating infantry for sure. I did want to do some sort of flame tank at some point. I think maybe that's probably a tier 5 vehicle. Not necessarily as generic as flame tanks usually are, but something where they have some affinity for fire. They have the firebrand, which is, obviously kind of like an Ahmed, right? And then they have the path sign even earlier at tier 2, which is like a crowd control gunboat, basically area denial. So stuff like that is obviously fairly useful. But yeah, when it comes to stuff like this, I'm thinking, we're gonna need some interesting concepts for some of this stuff for sure. It's gonna be really cool to see these guys in action. You're referencing the Avote, I think, right? The one that was most recently added. Or maybe you're thinking of Cathethrons, because Cathethrons are also kind of made of light. So the Cathethrons have technological hulls and shells that contain them. So obviously those can take damage just as the same as any others. The Avote are a bit less like, they're just kind of like unstable matter. So really anything could set them off, right? Chemical reactions and stuff. So I think the one that it probably makes the potentially least amount of sense to have fire work against is it might be the Thruck, because they're earth creatures and stuff, basically. So they're like living metal, living not even metal, but like living ore deposits, earth deposits. But whatever. It's future fire. It's not normal fire. So that's the excuse. The excuse for Ahmed. Yeah, it might be like plasma fire or something. Plasma beam stuff. It'll work out. Whatever it is, it'll work out. It's just that you gotta have a little Ahmed now and then. Okay, so let's talk about... I'm looking over at my naming document here, and I'm not really seeing anything that would be appropriate for I know exactly what I want for the like a higher tier version of this utility unit that is like a low weight capacity but repairs the unit that's garrisoned in it. Like maybe it would have like 4 weight capacity or something, the lower tier one. And so it could handle like, you know, anything from tiers 1 and 2. Um Although I'm not actually sure if that's true. Yeah, the steel wheel is 8. Oh wait, no, that's tier 3, obviously. But anchor is more, right? Oh no, it's 4. Check that out. Oh, the cutlass should probably not be tier 4, to be honest. But I think it's fine. Okay, so I know what I want from this unit. I just don't actually know what I want to call it. So we'll just make the u.yml. And we'll call this. Let me grab the. So I know this is going to be. This is. Probably fine. Let's make the repair cargo thing. Oh, I guess you could say journeyman. I've sort of went away from the idea of using man in a lot of this stuff because that is like human centric, literally. But it's probably still fine to use it. I don't know. I'll have to decide if I actually want. Journey ape. Yeah, I'll have to decide if I want to use that or not. All right, 5 HP per second seems pretty solid. Hmm. I think I control inserted or something. Hmm. Bit problematic that I don't have that many like tank icons. I guess I could process one, but I actually don't know that many tank graphics in general. Unfortunate. Yeah, I guess these could be 210. So for this higher tier one, we obviously want a bigger weight capacity. I wonder if I can. Maybe I should. Maybe I shouldn't. But I think I'll go higher than what I was initially planning on. All right. So besides that, I guess we really just have to come up with the sequel to the Cutlass. I'm still kind of lost on the name, obviously, for the Repairman. What's up, Balethol? If you see a guy with the same exact username as what's been being hidden this entire time, feel free to hide him for me so I don't have to keep doing it. Well, I know it's you because of the wrench, so it should be fine. You also have smashing powers, so. My man. How you doing, though? Mm, hmm. True. Lonely guy looking for a reaction, I guess. That's why I haven't really acknowledged his existence. I would suggest everybody else does the same, but people are going to do whatever. Thankfully, I can just blocklist him on my side, so I don't have to see him, but obviously it's pretty annoying for people who are trying to follow the chat on the website, so... Yeah, Odyssey's not bad. That's kind of like a borderline term where obviously it's from a play or whatever, like from a fictional work, but it's worked in a common parlance, so does it matter as much? Thinking. I do like the so I do like the attempted. Well, that was exactly what I was trying to search. Thanks, me. I do like the connection with if we look for expedition or exploration or whatever. Oh, owned. Oh, caravan's not actually a bad start either. Oh, what's that? Entourage. That's I feel like because that's a Frenchy word, it's a bit less sensible to use. But caravan or convoy, I think, could work out fine. The caravan maybe a bit more. Convoy implies something more than just one, but... Or caravel? What's caravel? Isn't that something related to a... The fuck? Caravel's definitely a thing. Oh, it's a ship. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I can't use that then. Chop shop. Yeah, because that's the other angle we could go for is the mechanic angle. None of these are any good. I will say the more I've used this website, the less useful it's actually become. Just in my experience. Probably because I've just mined it of all its fucking value. Hmm. There's another one we can do is hammer. No, I was looking for the noun actually. Hmm. A more generic name that I had in mind was safeguard, but that's not really even accurate because it's not like protecting; it's more healing. It's kind of protecting while you're inside it, but then if it blows up, then you're fucked. So I don't know. Don't know about that one. And it's not like the name was really all that great anyway, so I don't care much about it. I do kind of like procession, but I don't know about that one. Oh, that's also an action verb. Can't have that. Maybe we could go the angle of like cleansing, rejuvenation, something like that. A cooler word for filter. I don't know. I don't know. A lot of these are all pretty lame, TBH. Osmos. Now that's something. Yeah, I think we'll go for Osmos. That's the best one I've encountered so far. Yeah. Well, that'll be me when I'm working on something other than Ansifii, so don't worry. All right. All right, so there you go. We got our Osmos. And its sequel that can garrison and have way more units in it. Actually, in some ways, you can kind of tell that the anchor and the cavalcade are kind of the same. With the garrison, I mean. Although the anchor obviously can entrench to give more range, so I don't know. It's not really the same thing, I don't think. The anchor will get its own sequel at like tier 6. Well, I guess the anchor's sequel really is like the fucking pavilion, to be honest. Although it's kind of crazy to think about that because the weight capacity goes from 2 to 40. So I don't know. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and give that one a guess. Well, I did put the Discord one up there, but if you're not a audience accessor, you can't type in it, so it's not for everyone. All right, so now we need. I do want to do a sequel to the Cutlass. I think it would be appropriate for something like the. Yeah. Okay. All right, homie. Thanks for hanging. Peace out. Oh, actually, that makes more sense that way, doesn't it? Nice try, fake shambler. What's up, Veek? I'll check it out in a moment, and then I will use my bathroom break. Mm. Owned. No, I think 150 is probably fine, actually. Oh, I guess we should have speed for the projectile. Didn't think about that. Okay. Oh yeah, that's another thing where I wanted to find pair cargo. Okay. Not really sure what the afterburners will be called. I was thinking about calling them something related to snow, but eh. Okay. Oh, that's a push. Add avalanche. It will definitely need to be bigger than the Trojan icon, but we'll get there eventually. So this is suborder 1, armored transport. There will probably be an airborne version of the Cavalcade at some point as a higher tier one, so and with even more weight capacity. And instead of it being a garrison, it'll just have like repair way more units basically. All right. Well, we've officially got 32 units in tiers 1 through 4 for whatever that's worth. And then obviously if we were to keep on in this direction, I would like to get tier 5 a little bit more fleshed out overall. Because obviously right now we only have the firebrand. But yeah, I don't know. I'll think about that one. Right now, as opposed to 8, we simply have 5. Which is still more than I thought we would have, granted, but we already have the utility unit and the worker. I don't think we... This tier is actually a bit maybe even overloaded when it comes to utility or whatever. Then there's stuff like the Nebula, and then there's going to be more offensive option, maybe a sequel to the Motive, something that fires while moving. And does it'll do a bit of AoE, which this obviously didn't do. Oh, the Motive weapon is not defined correctly. Yeah, because it was originally written as Motive Rifle. Oh no, it's Motive Missile. Fix link to Motive Weapon. Hit push. There you go. So yeah, I think it's coming together though. It's looking pretty nice. I definitely need to go process some icons for tanks at some point, some sort of armor icon, because this is a bit hilarious, but we're getting there. So, and we need a tech structure for tier 4 air to round this out. Trying to think about like something to do with speed and messaging. Because if you think about like the emissary and the aurora is fast, the emissary is about like sending a message. So yeah, maybe something to do with just with velocity or whatever. Obviously, no pun intended, because the velocity is the name of the actual tier 1 fighter. Yeah. I think that'll do it for this quick session. So I shall BRB and then check out Veek's latest changes. So BRB. I have returned. So, let's check out what Veek did. Have the selection boxes always been so small? Interesting. For buildings, anyway. Alright, so I guess I'm supposed to... Ah, we got layer colors, I see. This is very, ugly, obviously. So I guess it would be nice to be able to copy these fields. Can I do text entry? No. Yeah, this is totally, like, work in progress stuff. Yeah. I was gonna say that would probably help a bit. Still, it's pretty cool that we have access to this kind of thing. Whatever this dirt tile is fucked. I find out. Oh, I can just minimize click this. This is ice dirt. Alright, I can fix that later. Do these have defaults assigned to them, or did you actually edit a lot of these? No, this is ice dirt, not mud. Mud is fine. I used mud earlier. That's pretty cool that we can control shit to that effect, though. That's pretty nice. Alright. Basically, the inners and outers are swapped. Should be easy to fix. Owned. No, it's... Okay. No, it's correct. That's pretty cool, though. Once you get the hue saturation stuff done, it'll look a bit better. And then, obviously, when we have more precise control over what we're actually doing. Fix... wait. Why did it take so long to stage that? Okay. Fix ice dirt. Push. Cool. Yeah, there will just be things that you can do to like change the lighting or whatever. You'll probably want to only do it subtly because if you really wanted to change the lighting, you would need a re-render. Or we would need to implement the real-time lighting system more eloquently. All right, so yeah, the question is now where do we descend into? Do we want to keep working on these kinds of concepts? When we get into the tier 5 stuff, it's a bit easier for me to, or like the higher tier stuff, it's a bit easier for me to look for inspiration. But oh, I had this the whole time. I didn't even know about it. 407. Change emissary icon. Yeah, that's more like it. Looks more like an armored transport to me. All right. I do need to start making some links here, though. I didn't link the... looks like I didn't link the Aurora or the... so I'll do that. Verdant Veil enables Avalanche. Iron Garden. Trans Avalanche. And then Academy enables Anthem. Okay. I guess I'll check the others too. Yeah. So Canteen. Enables Cyprian. Dispatch. Dispute. Yeah. It'll probably be most applicable to stuff that's used in the context of building a map out of Brood War art, basically. So, like, while we're using these things that were originally indexed in completely different tile sets and stuff, you know what I mean? Yep. Although figuring out team color on buildings is going to be a bit more difficult. It's not really that difficult. We just need, or not buildings in general. I meant units in general, but we just need to find a way to render the team color layers using Blender. Render those as a separate render of the same dimensions with the same settings. But we need to recolor them to a black and white gradient as well as like part of the operation. Think it's time for the madcap to make its reappearance. Why? Let's go back like a normal program. Huh, I never actually did an origin for Madcap. That's weird. Oh, okay. So in that case, when we're exporting player color, instead of worrying about recoloring them on the render, we would just render them out separately. Okay. Easy enough, I guess. I would just like a one push button render. You know, you configure your materials and stuff, but I would just like to be able to push a button to spit out the model, player color, or the sprite sheet, player color, and normals all in one thing. It's going to take some tinkering, but I feel like it's definitely possible. Check out my madcap. Full auto is definitely changing later, but that's what I got for now. I'll process a couple icons here, and then I'll slap together the missing air unit for tier 5. I guess if we packaged like some sort of Photoshop script that spit out that both decompiled and recompiled the compiled PNGs, it wouldn't be the biggest of deals, and it would technically give some advantage in file size, but I'm not sure by how much. So yeah, so far that's the only thing we've needed separate PNGs for, which does obviously have the knock-on effect of having 3 images per file or per graphic. You know what I mean? 3 images per unit. Yeah. Do you think we're actually going to need to implement some sort of streaming thing? Yeah. Well, hopefully we can get a actual functional solution. Yeah. Agreed there. I would certainly hope not. Oxel needs to be border one. We probably still want another infantry unit, but I'm still not 100% sure where or what it would end up being. Ram size micro. Yeah, the trouble will be if you're running it on like an integrated graphics or something, and you don't have if you don't have VRAM. I can easily see that being a source of slowdown. Hopefully not. Hopefully we can make it work. That's so insane. Yeah, I think if we weren't developing on Windows, it would be more likely for sure. Change medcap icon. Well, that's still a pretty good, solid effort, I think, on our part. We did the Madcap, we did the Cavalcade, the Osmos, the Avalanche, the Emissary, the Oxel, and the Index. I feel like I'm missing one, but it's probably just because I've edited a bunch of other stuff. And we got new icons and stuff, so that's nice. So yeah, good shit there. We really only need, what, one more unit for tier 5 to be complete in line with the other setups. I'll think about that because I'm not really 100% sure what unit I would want at this point. I've got to consider the compositions that people would be making. And maybe because this unit doesn't, I mean, they have the Cavalcade and the Worker, so I didn't want to lean into heavily into utility units, but maybe a Specialist Infantry would be helpful at this point, like moving up. I mean, we have the Firebrand, which is close quarters, but that's not exactly specialty. Some sort of like more specialized infantry unit would probably help round out compositions at this point. But yeah, things are looking pretty epic. So I think that'll do it for me for now. I will be back in 2 days to smash out some more stuff. Tomorrow, while Veek's working on his stream, I'll be working on unit ports from Brood War, from Cosmonarchy Brood War, and trying to get the Cosmonarchy Brood War races online a little bit more fully. Still a ways off from that, but now that we are seeing more RTS mechanics at play, it makes sense to do that. And then, yeah, stay tuned for whenever Veek's stream is tomorrow, and we'll just keep smashing editor functionality and stuff. And that'll do it. Bye.